Hello, historians. I'm going over the U.S. during World War I. I am not going into any of the battles, and I'm definitely not going into detail on anything. This will be a pretty brief overview, which will still last a half hour. So here we go. So I can't talk about our role in World War I until I talk about a few things that were going on in Europe. So there were a few things. First, Europe for quite a while had been building up militaristically. There was kind of an arms race. Germany, Austria-Hungary, France, UK, they were all, not just them, of course, the other countries too, were building up large militaries. The UK was building up its navy. They were in like this, oh wow, I have 10,000 soldiers. Well, we have 20,000 soldiers. So there was a military buildup. And there was also this sense of nationalism. Everybody thought that they were the absolute best. And that means if they're the best, the other countries weren't. So militarism, nationalism, and I think this next slide is my imperialist slide, or it's a map. Let me see. Okay, it's the map. So this is after the war. That Austria-Hungarian Empire broke up. I don't know why I don't want to be able to say that right now. Russia changed borders. It's just, there was a lot of movement that happened after this war. And so besides militarism, besides nationalism, there was also very much the sense of imperialism. The European nations were playing hungry hippo with the globe. So France had Vietnam. England had India. They were all fighting over who would have the China market. We wanted in. During the 1898 Spanish-American War, we had imperialist instincts too. We wanted in. So the acronym for what was going on that led to World War I was MANIA. Militarism, imperialism, nationalism. Oh, I spelled mania wrong. The alliances. So they were making secret alliances with the other European nations. So here we have, like now, after World War II, we have NATO. If somebody attacks France, France is in the NATO alliance, so the United States and Canada and everybody else in the NATO alliance is coming to France's aid. It's all for one for all, Three Musketeers type deal. But during World War I, or before World War I, Austria-Hungary had a secret alliance with Germany, and so once they got into what with Sarajevo wanted to be separate. Once they got into it, Germany was pulled into the hook, and once France somehow got involved with that, England was on the hook, and it was just these alliances were pulling people into the war, and nobody knew who was going to be in these alliances, so it made things precarious. So militarism, alliances, nationalism, imperialism, that's the hungry hippo game. And then there was the assassination of the Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Poor guy, him and his wife never got a honeymoon. And he wanted a honeymoon, but his uncle was the emperor of the Austro-Hungary Empire, and he's like, nope, sorry, I'm sending you to Sarajevo because we need you to go take a tour of our land. And there were separatists there who didn't think it should be part of that empire, and they went to assassinate him, and somehow the assassination didn't work, but there was a bomb that blew up, and so when they got back to the hotel, Franz Ferdinand and his wife found this out and was like, oh dear, we should go to the site of that disaster and see what happened and see what we could do. And then the assassin saw him and was able to shoot him. So anyway, Franz Ferdinand was not, absolutely not, the real reason that the war started. It was the spark in the powder keg. He was important. He was an heir apparent. He was the heir apparent to that big empire. But what happened is, because of the militarism and the nationalism and everybody thinking that they were the absolute best, it was like somebody lighting a match in a dirty fireworks factory. Kaboom! And that's what led us to war in the summer of 1914. So Franz Ferdinand was assassinated June 28th, 1914. By July, Europe was in the war. It took a month from that moment. And we didn't want to. U.S. had no business in these European battles. That was European business. That was our party line. We weren't in it. So here's poor Franz Ferdinand. Remember, he wanted a late honeymoon. He already had kids. So, yeah. Once again, he is like the major spark, but not the real reason. And so Europe had the two powers. So it was, if I remember right, Italy, Austria-Hungarian Empire, and Germany. And on the other side, we had England and France and Russia, many other countries. So in 1915, a British luxury cruiser was sunk. This was something that really upset, well, it upset England because, yeah, their luxury cruiser was destroyed by their enemies, but it also upset the United States. One, how could Germany kill all these innocent civilians? And two, just like 128 Americans on there. What kind of monsters would blow up a cruise ship? We're not telling anyone that there might have been weapons and money going to the European powers we favored over there. Yeah, but still, it was a civilian cruise ship that the U-boats destroyed. Oh, and by the way, it's U-boats because Germans have these really nice long words. Unterseeboot. So undersea boat. That's like, you know what? U-boats. Much, much easier. So that was 1915. So Woodrow Wilson was president when World War I broke out in Europe, and he campaigned on "He kept us out of war." And he promised U.S. neutrality. We are not going to get embroiled in these decadent foreign wars. It's ridiculous. So he did really well in his re-election campaign. And guess what? He kept us out of war. Wasn't terribly successful. There was this telegram that was intercepted. It was supposed to be going from Germany to Mexico or to the Mexican ambassador. I'm not sure exactly who was supposed to receive this, but the British got it. They intercepted this secret message. Oh, look here. The telegram was sent by Foreign Minister Arthur Zimmerman to the President of Mexico in a military alliance against the U.S. In return for Mexico's support, Germany would help Mexico regain New Mexico, Texas, Arizona from the U.S. But the British got it, interpreted it, and then turned it over to America. I mean, right now, in U.S. history, the idea that Mexico could have Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona seems pretty damn far-fetched to us. This is, okay, no, that's just United States. It's always going to be United States. But remember, it was only like 65 years ago before this, 65 years before this, not ago. All those places were part of Mexico. They had lost it in the Mexican-American War in 1848. Under the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, they were forced to surrender that land. Ooh, can you imagine how that must have felt then when oil became important in Texas? Damn. Anyway, they lost a lot of gold-producing and oil-producing region here. But 65 years before, there were people who remembered when those states were Mexican. So it felt real. And so, when was the Zimmerman telegram intercepted? I have to pause it and find out. But before that, Pancho Villa was a Mexican military person, and they actually launched an attack that on an American military base in Arizona that killed Americans. So this was very real. I'm going to pause and find out when the Zimmerman telegram was intercepted. Oh wait, look, right here. January 19th, 1917 is a timestamp on it. I don't know if that's when it was received or when it was deciphered, but Pancho Villa attacked in March 9th, 1916. So, yeah. When this came in, it was very, very real to the Americans. And here is more information about that telegram. Ambassador Walter Page sent this telegram to Woodrow Wilson conveying the translation of the Zimmerman telegram in January 1917. The U.S. was neutral, and then we weren't. We went in 2 months after we got this. It's like, yep, turns out we're in. Okay, here's Pancho Villa and his crew. As I said, they attacked us in Arizona. It was a real thing. So, yeah, it felt real. And between this and the Lusitania, and the U-boats weren't actually being very discriminating about who they were hitting. And we really, really, really wanted to stay neutral because we were trade partners with both Britain and Germany. We didn't want to go to war with anybody who we had these trade deals with. But the U-boats were attacking people that they thought were bringing money and weapons and stuff to Britain. And we weren't exactly not bringing money and weapons to Britain. Our neutrality was kind of iffy on that. But have you ever tried to be friends with someone breaking up? A couple? It's like, yeah, Britain and Germany are having this big breakup, and we're trying to play friends with both of them, but they're making it really hard on us. And we sided with the one we had the better deal with. And this was more a land war. This wasn't a they are the bad guys. It wasn't a cut and dry they're the bad guys thing at this point. So, yeah, we just sided with Britain on this one. Okay, so here's some of the propaganda things. Gee, I wish I were a man. I'd join the Navy. Be a man and do it. United States Navy recruiting station. Ugh. Anyway, yes, women were doing a lot of support roles at the time. They were working as nurses. They were building stuff in the factories. It's not quite at the scale that the Rosie and the Riveter stuff was at World War II, but women were taking these jobs. And it did actually change the nature of, like, feminism in America. Of course, the women were fired or pushed back into the home. Some of them didn't want to go, but it was expected that they would go back to the home after the war. This other one, for Home and Country, Victory Liberty Loan. A significant portion of this war was financed not through direct taxation. There was direct taxation, but most of this war was financed through these Liberty bonds. How do I explain this? It was a savings bond. They didn't have a huge return on investment, but you give the country $20 now and buy this Liberty bond, and in time it would mature and you would get a decent return on your investment. So for people who couldn't afford that, they also had stamps that you could buy, and if once you had enough of these stamps, it would actually be worth a Liberty bond. If not, it was just money going into the country. So yeah, we paid for this war on credit, but we've paid for every war of ours on credit except for Korea, because Truman saw the bill from World War II. It's like, you know what? I don't want to add to our credit bill anymore. We're just going to pay out of taxation. But anyway, that's beside the point. Let's see. Ooh, at this time, this has nothing to do with the United States, really. Well, it'll come into play later during the Cold War. My goodness, not French, not German, Russian. That's the word I want. The Russian peasants were serfs. They were tied to the land. They could not just quit their job and stop being peasant farmers. They were tied to the land. But during World War I, they were conscripted, and they were told that they had to go fight in the other parts of Europe. They were going to have to go to France and fight this war. They get over to France, and it's like, wait a minute, you're a farmer, but you could just quit and become a painter, or you could quit and go into work in the city. Wait, what? And they were seeing what it was like to be a normal person in the other European countries, and they were just done with that. And they came back and were part of the overthrow of the Russian Emperor, Tsar Nicholas. So there was, for a very brief time, a Russian Republic. And then out of that, there was a Soviet uprising, because turns out revolutions very rarely ever go in a great way. We got lucky with the United States. So anyway, the Russian peasants, seeing life in Europe, were spurred on. So this becomes important because later on, that's a large communist system that we're going to be in the Cold War with later. But it's not that much of a problem right now. While this was all going on in Europe, we were still neutral, but we are like, you know what? Maybe we should really start building up our military supplies just in case, and maybe we should instate the draft. We called it the Selective Service Act, but it was the draft. So when did we get over there? 1917, but our first big battle that was just mostly Americans, it was our battle over there, was the Battle of Belleau Wood in 1918. Yes, I had to look at my notes on that one. I am not a battle historian. And I'm definitely not going to talk about this slide. Okay. This was, I believe the phrase is, this was a war of inches and feet and not a war of miles. They, mostly over the fields of France, were digging trenches in and defending their position. And it was a back and forth trying to defend these square feet. As I said, mostly in France. So this is when trench warfare happened. They were digging in these trenches, and then because of the trench warfare, tanks, flamethrowers, and poison gases were pretty much weapons of choice because, yes, machine guns were very, very much in use, but they were ducking down into their trenches when mustard gas then would be deployed, and, okay, hiding down below the line of sight wasn't going to help the soldiers. And so gas mask technology actually became a big deal right now. I have a picture of a gas mask in one of these slides. There you go. It's the next slide. And see, here's another image of the trenches. Archaeologists are still digging in the farmers' fields of France and finding the casualties of this war. Okay, I told you about Liberty bonds and us borrowing off our people. We also were we needed factories that usually produced, I don't know, cars and consumer goods and such. We started putting in place the War Production Act. I don't think it was called that for this war, but we paid these companies now to make tanks, to make war trucks, to make bullets and bombs and all kinds of other weaponry. So War Industries Board, there we go. So we actually had a large economy based around this defense. And as President Eisenhower said in 1959 when he left office, it's before the military-industrial complex that formed after World War II, we could get people like plowshare companies to make swords instead, but because we didn't have our own war industry. But then after World War II, we developed a war industry, and that's a large segment of our American economy today. Okay. What else? Oh, this was shifting the population. Remember, still a large segment of the population lived in rural areas. And because of the needs of these big factories to produce enough goods for the soldiers and the battle overseas, people started moving even more into the cities now. And also, this was the beginning of the Great Migration. The African American population of the United States was concentrated still mostly in the South at this point. And because of the availability of jobs, many of them were moving to the North and Northwest. So, New York, Chicago, Detroit, out west to California, there was a large movement. So this was the start of the Great Migration. And then when the black GIs got back to the United States, having been treated better in Europe, they came back to the South and realized how bad things were. And they accelerated the Great Migration by moving with themselves and their families out of the South. Okay, anything else I want to tell you about this? Nope. Okay, wartime propaganda. This is a German. Yeah. Okay, so we mastered propaganda at this time, and we spent a lot of time and money making people feel things. So there was a lot of anti-German feelings. We were calling sauerkraut Liberty cabbage at that point. But this propaganda and us learning how to affect emotions in such a brief, second flash, after the war, we had a very well-developed way of advertising now, because many of the people going into propaganda then came back and worked in the advertising industry. Okay, here's some more. The German Hun eating the world, trying to take over the world. Emperor Wilhelm beat back the Huns by Liberty bonds. In other words, lend money to the American government to make this go away. Okay, so after the war, we had the Treaty of Versailles. And I can't say enough bad things about the Treaty of Versailles. They decided when this war ended, people are going to message me. They decided when this war ended, like the nations that fought against Germany, so mostly America, France, England, some of our other allies, Australia, we're going to be in this closed room. Sorry, Germany, you're going to have to sit outside while we decide how we're going to punish you. They said it was all Germany's fault. It really was kind of the Austrian-Hungary. Why can't I say that? Austro-Hungarian Empire. It was really, really their fault that started this. But since they had dissolved, kaboom, no, that empire is completely gone now. It's all Germany's fault. And I think after inflation, they figured it out. Germany owed $33 billion in war reparations. And Germany was locked out and never got a say in it. And it's like, sorry, you're going to have to give the Rhineland to France. And then the French were really, really mean to the German people that were in that territory. And going to give this land to France, and you're going to have to pay back all this war debt. And, okay, we'll let you into the League of Nations, which the League of Nations is kind of the forerunner to the United Nations. And Woodrow Wilson was like thinking, this is a great idea. Let's have this coalition of countries to settle these international disputes so it doesn't happen again. We get back to the United States with this League of Nations idea, and politicians like Henry Cabot Lodge is like, sorry, nope, no foreign entanglements, especially not with Europe. Absolutely not. And Woodrow Wilson went on this speaking tour all around the country, wore himself down so bad he ended up having a stroke. There is rumors that his stroke was so bad that he wasn't able to actually do anything, and his wife was relaying messages that she was making up, and they say that maybe she was the leader of the country, the first female president for a year. But don't know how true that is, but that's the rumor that's going around. But we tried to join the League of Nations, but Henry Cabot Lodge and his ilk absolutely blocked it.